Welcome to Dental Unscripted, where Mike Dinzio and Paula Quinn break down the practice ownership journey, one episode at a time. Starting up, buying, and running a successful dental practice.
What up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dental Unscripted. This is Michael Dinzio and Paula Quinn potting it up again today, this afternoon. We're excited to be on the air again. It's been a minute since we've been doing this, and we got a good episode today. It's all about due diligence and what to look at after you've made an offer and it's gotten accepted. And we've gotten a lot of clients that, not our clients, but a lot of people that have expressed issues, concerns, things that they've missed going through the due diligence. And we're practice management client coaches, and we hear about all this stuff after they've closed. And so, today it's just really a breakdown of like what Paul and I think are the most important things to look at before you actually sign on the dotted line. And it's a scary thing to sign. And I don't want to go on too much of a rampage here, but like at the end of the day, that anxiety that you get right before closing, a lot of people get it. I'm hoping that our clients have less of it. I think there's always going to be some of it. But I can imagine that folks that don't have like a consultant, buyer advocate, buyer rep, and they're really relying on the practice broker and maybe their CPA and accountant. There's some anxiety going into that close because maybe they didn't look at the practice's performance deeper. They may have looked at, the contract. The attorney walks you through all of the scary legal parts of this transaction. The CPA talks about all of the numbers and financials and the black and white of the practice, but did you spend enough time looking at how the business, the practice, the clinic operates on a daily and what's coming at you post-close? And I think that is why there is a world of buyer reps, because you need to look deeper. You need to see what's going on in the office, how you can improve it, things you need to fix, things you should be aware of before you get the keys and the team comes at you with all of the things. And look, you might not change all of it day one, but you need to be aware that some things might be broken in the house. And so, that's what today is all about. I'm super excited. Paula bought multiple practices more recently, is right out of COVID. And, she felt that real pain of owning in the first 90 days. That's a scary thing. It's a scary thing. So anything to add to that, Paula, why maybe a buyer rep makes sense for folks? Selfish plug for us, I know, but even if we're not your buyer rep, why does someone need someone looking at stuff that like, did you feel like you were totally prepared when you bought your practice?
I mean, no, I don't think you're ever totally prepared. I had your help. So, that definitely opened my eyes to some of the things. I think it just boils down to, you don't know what you don't know. And if you can have somebody there to help you not make an expensive mistake, maybe even help you save money, give you advice. I mean, you wouldn't probably buy a house without a realtor. You probably wouldn't, would
you buy a house without an inspection?
Yeah. That's even better. You wouldn't typically sign a contract without having an attorney read it. I mean, it depends on what it is, right? So I think that's the same thing. It's just, like you said, the brokers are great, but at the end of the day, their client is the seller. And at the end of the day, they've never worked in a dental practice either.
That's the key.
They only know what they know as well. Mm-hmm. So I think having someone who's done it a lot, people on the team that have worked in dental practices, people on the team who have bought and sold dental practices,
Yeah.
really can just help point out, even some of the mistakes that I made. You and I learned from them, which is great.
You know what's interesting, Paul, is like when I left Bank of America, I thought I knew everything. And the learning curve for me on these transitions was like, boom, like straight up. And it felt at times like drinking from, what did I say? Fire hose. And like, of course, all of the knowledge I had about all those transactions I did with B of A obviously made me very capable. But when I started doing stuff with you and Stefani, I was realizing there's a lot of stuff I was missing. So I'm sitting here thinking that like I have conversations with CPAs all the time, attorneys all the time. And honestly, I don't even think they know why they're negotiating some things that they negotiate because they don't really know how it works in the office, truly. They're just like, they come up with these clauses or they say these things. I don't even think they really know how it works. And I didn't. I said all those same things coming right out of B of A because that's what you do. That's how you negotiate. This is how it is. Boilerplate contracts. This is just how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone like actually said, well, why do you do it that way? And is this really a big deal? You'd say it's a big deal, but you wouldn't really know the consequence of it. If is this $1,000 problem or a $20,000 problem? And they're just like dying on the hill over certain little $500,000 problems. And they're not big problems actually. So I just think that like this episode is really, just getting a little bit more operational and less risk and risk things, transactional things that you might get from a CPA accounting banker. This is going to be more operational. So all things due diligence, of course, we could never cover all the things we look at, but I did write down some of my most favorite things. And I think the first one's the hardest topic. So let's hit it first. It's active patients. And it's active patients because that's truly what you're buying. That's your goodwill. That's the goodwill you're buying. Otherwise it's just a bunch of equipment, hard assets, computers, operatories, cone beams, whatever, hard assets. And there is value on just hard assets, but typically when you buy a business, you're buying goodwill, and that goodwill is what's most valuable. It's the thing that you're paying for the most. And active patients and or hygiene patients is, in my opinion, kind of that goodwill. It's a count. It's the only number that I know of that actually represents goodwill. And so, Paula, I know there's a bunch of ways that folks come up with kind of active patients. When you're looking at active patients, how would you define active patients? What are some good ways? And you taught me this. What are some good ways to really get a decent estimate on actual active patients? How would you approach active patients when you're looking at a practice?
Well, I mean, the rule of thumb out there is obviously the 18 months. And the reason being is because not everybody's great at going to the dentist. So there is some room to recapture people who have gone over that 12-month mark. Mm-hmm. Once it starts hitting over that 18 months, it's more and more doubtful if they're really truly an active patient anymore. Do we have the right email, the right phone number? Did they already go somewhere else? If we smiled and dialed and truly called the 18-month to 24-month, like how many people are we actually going to get to come back in? When We're talking the 12 to 18-month, rule of thumb is, there's still a chance. Obviously 12 months, they've been in the last 12 months, 100% I would consider them an active patient, but rule of thumb is last 18 months.
18 months. Okay. So a lot of softwares kind of have 24 months. Some have 12 months. It's like, why can't they just have an 18-month button?
And some of them do of all time.
All time.
In a good practice management software, if they're truly deactivated, or they're a patient who is a guarantor who's never had an appointment
Mm-hmm.
or they haven't been in 18 months, we would be able to narrow all that down so that you don't get the guarantor, you don't get the patients who haven't been in, we forgot to deactivate, whatever. That's the best way to report. All practice management softwares are not created equal.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, like you said, they may include guarantor, they may include people who haven't even had an ADA code attached. Somebody may forget to deactivate. They haven't been in 18 months. It still may count them. So, there's kind of all kinds of things. If we were really, this would never happen in the world of active patients. But really, if we were really going to get to the nitty gritty, anyone that's only had an D0140 wouldn't even really be counted. It's just like a marketing company. We count it as opportunity. And that's why it's considered an active patient, because anyone who's been seen in the last 18 months is an opportunity. Did somebody go try and get them? No, but if if they only came in for like an emergency exam and they haven't been in 13 months.
Yeah.
Are they coming back? But we can't get that nitty gritty. So we say, look, if they've had an ADA code, they've been in the last 18 months, there is still an opportunity to go get these people.
I get a lot of the that I get that a lot as a buyer's rep, and that is emergencies versus true hygiene. So like the purest of the pure active patients are folks that come into your hygiene department once a year or more, hopefully. But it's interesting when you're looking at dental practice to purchase is like, as you start digging into this, the number starts getting smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. So the truth is like, all the things that you might hear on this podcast, other podcasts, is like, don't buy anything that's less than 1,000 patients. But then you start whittling it down. It's like really only 600 of them on the books. That doesn't mean it's a bad practice. It's just you're trying to figure out really what like Paula said, is what that opportunity is to grab some of those patients and bring them in. Now, if they've been too far out, hey, good luck. You're not going to get them. Paula said that.
Well, you have to remember too, though, Michael, it's better than a new patient. So a lot of our clients will go out and throw out mailers or throw out what do you call it? Clicking.
Pay-per-click or mailers.
Pay-per-click. Yeah. And they're doing that on, patients that have never even been in their practice, and they're just throwing money to the wind and hope it sticks. If you think about it, if you buy a practice where it says there's 1,500 active patients, but truly only 900, just put something together for them that's marketable and appetizing, because they have been in before.
Yeah.
And if they've only been in an emergency, they probably still don't have a dentist.
Yeah.
So
that's right.
To me, you have better luck sometimes going after those. You just got to get creative. But I wouldn't bank on it. Like I wouldn't be
So the big rub, right, is that the brokers pull a report. I'm working on a deal right now in Sacramento, and the broker pulled a report. The report says 1,500. After further investigation, it's closer to 1,000. And the reality is, like, the broker guys, you need to understand this. Brokers' liability is simply to pull reports and post what the report says out of the software. The software is not accurate most of the time. So you're sitting here thinking, well, I'm going to sue the broker or screw that guy. He's trying to screw us over. He's misrepresenting. There's got to be some liability there. There isn't, guys. If the broker goes in, pulls a report, says active patients X, and posts it on the prospectus, that's literally all the liability they've got. And they can cover themselves as, hey, that's what the practice software said. The truth is you got to look at, like Paula said, exams, hygienes, the cleanings, all the things, and really make a determination of what you think is the range of active patients. The other thing that I will say is some fun statistics is that, like, on average, a patient's value to a practice, on average, if it's PPO, I've seen a lot of fee-for-service practices lately. The practice is PPO driven, not so much Medicaid, just, heavy PPO. You're looking at like $700 to $800 per patient per year. So if you take the total collections and divide it by what you think the active patient is, and it's a lot higher than $700-800, then maybe you're off, or vice versa, really low. Okay, so that's kind of a nice little KPI or little metric that you can use as 800, 700, 800. The next person's going to ask, well, what is it for fee for service? Dude, it could be crazy high. We just saw one that was $2,500 dollars per patient, and I think it might be accurate. So just the rules kind of go out the window with fee for service a little bit. But if it's PPO, it's a little bit easier to figure that out. Okay, so we covered kind of active patients. You really want to dig in. The next thing I was going to say, though, is kind of retention pre-appointment. To me, it kind of goes hand in hand with active patients, but pre-appointment slash hygiene reappointment slash kind of all of the retention metrics matter to me when I'm buying a practice or thinking about buying a practice. And usually you can smoke this out by seeing how many active patients there are, like we just discussed, and then looking at the schedule and seeing how far out you're scheduled. So like if you have a crap ton of patients, like 2,500 active patients, and you get into that chart audit and you're seeing that hygiene's only out 3 weeks, we got a problem. Why is that a problem, Paula? Because again, it's every practice has kind of like this DNA with collections, with reappointing protocols, like, and the patients are trained a certain way. So as a buyer, well, first of all, what's pre-appointment? What do you think about retention and height? Like all of that kind of, why is that? Like, if you're a buyer, is that a problem? Is that a concern? What should you be expecting? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So people get real confused with the reappointment versus pre-appointment, and pre-appointment is basically your entire active patient base. So whether it's your entire active patient base or your entire active hygiene patient base, depending on which pre-appointment you're talking about, it's how many of my active patient base actually has a next appointment. So when we're looking at hygiene, if we've got 1,000 active patients and 50% of those have a patient, we're at a 50% pre-appointment rate. That's not good. We see it a lot, but it's not good. And what does that mean? That means that our patients are either not rescheduling when they're leaving, or they're calling and canceling. You know, they're falling off the schedule. Reappointment is when they left, did I get them on the books? So my reappointment rate could be 90%, everybody's scheduling. And then when we go take a look at the pre-appointment, they could be falling off for whatever reason. They could be appeasing me and scheduling. We could live in a place where everyone vacations and people just keep calling and canceling. Whatever it is, they're not on the books. So the problem with that for a buyer is, you know, you mentioned 3 weeks out. It means a couple of things. It means our patients either don't value their hygiene appointments. They don't think it's important to have a 6-month recare or whatever frequency you have them on, or our team just doesn't reschedule them. And what that means 6 months from now is our schedule's empty.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to smile and dial to fill our hygiene schedule or even our doctor's books. Now, doctor's books aren't scheduled 6 months out. You know, we like them a couple weeks out. I've seen everything from a couple weeks to a few months. Being a few months out can be a problem because then patients are waiting on the doctor's schedule. But being a few months out to 6 months out on hygiene is actually a good thing. So we won't talk about block scheduling and how they should leave some.
No, let's not get crazy.
Holes, but it should be pretty full 6 months out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I don't know if that's
no, that's perfect. And sometimes it's kind of funny, like, guys, get into you have to understand what kind of practice you're buying. Like I have clients that are buying like really small practices. I don't want them to be buying these practices, but they want to deal. it's almost like an asset purchase, or they think it's like a fixer upper. There's a lot of those deals, and I don't love. You did one, and I don't love those deals. I really don't. And
it's hard work.
It's hard work, and there's a lot of reasons for it. That's a different episode, different day. But if there's like 500 patients, and the practice did, I don't know, $600,000 last year, and you go into a chart audit, and the restorative schedule was like 4 days out, 3 days out. The hygiene appointment, the hygiene book is not 6 weeks out. Don't be shocked by that. There's no patients. It's a small practice. If there's only 500 patients, active patients, and the restorative schedule's 2 days out, that front office person is constantly trying to schedule it. They're trying to do the same day dentistry immediately. It's kind of a high pressure situation it's very painful and it's very stressful. So like, understand that's what you're buying. It's not the seller's fault. That's the business you put an offer in, and that's the business you're going after. Don't be expecting, a blonde when you made an offer on a brunette. Like, that's just two different things. Bigger practice has that kind of full schedule, or at least they should. And pre-appointment, hygiene reappointment, retention, all of that matters with big practices, small practices. But like, if you've determined that the practice has 500 patients and 400 of them are on the schedule, they're damn good. That's good. But guess what? There's only 400. That's all you got. It's just, schedule's not that full. So just think about that, right? Like, you all are leaving big practices making good money. You work probably for a DSO or some busy practice. That's probably not what you're buying if it's only 500 patients. Hell, even 1,000. You know what I mean? If you're at a really busy practice today, 1,000 patients is nothing. So just keep in mind that all of that. The one big thing that I'm going to hit real quick is cash flow. Now the CPAs and the bankers do look at cash flow. What's that mean, cash flow? So it's like a profit of the business. And, this shouldn't be part of this episode, like due diligence. You should know the cash flow. You should know how much money the business makes before you even make an offer. So that's like before you even get into due diligence. This episode's all about chart audit due diligence. But what I will say is, we get into a lot of conversations of scenarios where the business throws off, I don't know, $200,000, but the seller wants to stay on. Or we're going to open up days, or you're going to put a lot of money into marketing because the business needs to grow, or you're losing a hygienist, or there's a doctor doing hygiene and that's weird, so we're going to fire them and we're going to do that. Whatever the scenarios, there's a lot of scenarios of what that transition plan looks like. What I don't think a lot of people do is they don't re-look at the numbers based on the transition plan. So some CPA banker told you it was making 200, but your plan, the way you see it or the way you're thinking, the seller's going to stay on, they're going to get paid, all these things happen. You're actually netting way less than what the CPA banker thought that you were going to make when you looked at the deal initially. So you have to run kind of like projections. Again, things we do for our clients is like, okay, you've got a couple scenarios. You could kick the seller out and make all this money, make 200 grand. Good for you. Or you could keep the seller on 1 day a week. If you gave them 1 day a week, that's X amount of procedures. You're going to pay them 30% of those procedures minus the 200 grand. Now you're only make, I don't know, 120. Is that cool? No? Oh, well, then maybe we shouldn't keep the seller on. Or whatever the scenario is, make sure that you understand what the cash flow looks like before you even make an offer, and then what the projection of the scenario is going to be and how that affects the cash flow. This whole thing is like, there's no reason why you should be like, oh shit, after you buy. You should know exactly what this looks like post-close, because you should be doing all of this before you buy, including adjusting the cash flow. So that's my little rant on cash flow. But CPAs, bankers, they kind of look at it in the beginning, and then nobody really discusses, well, what if the seller stays on? Well, the bank didn't underwrite it that way. You're deciding to keep the seller on. they're thinking you're firing the seller and they're saying yes to the loan. But maybe if you told the lender that you were going to keep the seller on, maybe the bankers wouldn't be doing this loan. So, but still, that's something that you should know. So that's my little thing. And that kind of lays us up into the next one. And that's procedures by count by dollars. There's been a few times where we've looked at practices and thought that it was a bread and butter practice. And it turns out we got into it and they didn't really tell us they were doing all these implants or all on X's, because when you look at procedure codes, and Paula, you're going to be better at this conversation than me, but like if you're just seeing implants, you're thinking they're just dropping implants, but it could be all on X and that's 4 implants, right? So like, or whatever. So how would you smoke something like that out? Because I got to be honest, guys, next level CPAs, bankers, the even brokers that don't know dentistry, they're looking at the procedure counts and representing, and they might not really know what's going on in the office. And it's your job to determine if you can do the dentistry of that office. That's the whole point of a chart audit, by the way, is to look at charts. So Paula, what would be some things that like you could do? And I'm putting you on the spot. I don't know if you have an answer here. Let's maybe just have a discussion, but what are some things that you can do just to determine if you can handle this clinic procedurally? Again, putting you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be additional codes that go with all on fours that are in addition to just a one-off implant. I mean, you're probably going to have more massive numbers of implants. I mean, it's just going to be the other codes that go with it. You're just going to look at all those.
The cluster of code.
Yeah, like the different codes that are going to go with it.
Well, do dentists know that? Like the clusters and the combos, or we're just telling them that that's what they need to look
Yeah, I mean, I think they know. I mean, they're going to know if they drop implants, they're going to know the 3 codes they use to drop an implant. Mm-hmm. When other stuff starts going with it, like hybrids and things like that, there's going to be other additional codes. They're going to be like, what is this code? Because it's also typically a 6,000 code. So there's going to be like other codes. I think you could probably also look at some lab bills. Like if the lab is out of control, when you do, you can look at referred out. I mean, most dentists, when an all on X is being treatment planned and performed, they're either going to have the lab come in and help them out, or they're going to send some things out. So I think looking at referred out, I think looking at lab expenses, and I think looking at codes. Okay. If you get in there and there's 5 implants all year long.
Yeah.
And even if they did an all on 4, who cares? It was 1, or 2. Yeah. If you get in and there's a ton of implants, yay, if you drop implants, but then you're going to want to go 3 steps further and start asking questions to make sure that these are single and not something crazy.
I think that's on point. I mean, I know it's on point because I just don't think, guys, if there's one thing to take away from this episode, it's this part, because most of the due diligence that any of us could do that know dental, you can mitigate some big risk. But this segment of procedure counts and how to snuff out if you can handle this practice, this is the single most important due diligence factor. And I feel like going into the chart audit, people think, at least our clients or folks that I talk to, they think it's about validating what the broker represented. Well, they put in the prospectus that the collections were $320,000, and so we need to pull our report and make sure it's $320,000. Guys, the brokers have no time to manipulate reports. It's not what the chart audit's for. We will pull those reports, sure, and we're going to do our analysis, sure, but like you're missing the whole point of a chart.
But we're pulling those reports to just dig 2 layers deeper. We're not pulling those reports to see if the broker misrepresented.
Exactly.
Because there's other information that we're looking for, like these, you know, with this implant, you're gonna look to see if there's
exactly
prosthetic. I can't even, like a denture, not a denture code, but basically
whatever. We're digging in deeper, and it's not about trying to catch the broker in an aha situation. You know, active patient count's one of those things that your broker's probably wrong. It's just, they just are. They're pulling a report and posting it. But
even when we get the number, we've got to kind of like,
I know
dive in, and
I got to be honest, I'll never know exactly what your active patient count is, but I'm going to look at it 3 different angles and kind of narrow in on a bracket. That's the way I coach. But like, again, just make sure you can handle the practice. That's what the chart audit's for. You're going there, you're looking at procedures, you're looking at x-rays, you're looking at the befores and afters and trying to figure out what the diagnosis is. And then you're also looking for big stuff that you can't do. That is, like, we've coached some clients post-close that could not handle the practice. And they said we could. Is that our fault? No, that they should have really dug into that and made sure. Only you can tell us that you can handle it or not, which kind of leads me to the big cases ortho work in progress. So, like, guys, gals, if you can't, like, big cases, ortho, work in progress, this is always something that gets discussed. And, you know, I'm throwing this up just specifically because of ortho lately. I had a conversation with a broker once, and the broker's like, well, doctors come out of school. They know how to do ortho. They do cases in school. I'm like, dude, what school are you talking about, first of all? And second of all, no. They are not comfortable doing ortho unless they are ortho kings and queens at their associate job. So, like, this is the brokers think that you guys can do implants.
Invisalign is in almost every school.
But to think that someone could come in and do
exactly.
I just looked at a practice that was doing $200,000 worth of ortho, and I asked my buyer, "Do you do ortho?" And they're like, "No, but I can learn it." I'm like, "Okay, we're talking about 15% of this practice is clear aligners. This is like a full-blown indoctrination of the practice. They're diamond whatever with Invisalign. Most people can't do that.
Right.
Otherwise, everybody would do it. We try to get our clients to do it, and they don't want to do it. Like, that's the point, is like, no, you don't just pick up ortho. You don't just pick up implants. You know, so implants, big cases, ortho, you got to look at that. You got to look at it.
Even sometimes endo, I mean, a lot of people aren't comfortable doing endo, third molar extractions. If they do endo, they don't love upper molars. You know, there's all kinds of things that.
Yeah. And that's why on the prospectuses and the bank's application, you're going to see break down the procedures by percentage. That is literally the box they're filling out for you, and you should pay attention to that and look at it. And if you see 3%, 4%, 5% ortho, okay, now we got to look at the 80/90 code, and we got to dig into that, and we got to look at the chart audit, and we got to look at the cases in the pantry on chart audit day, and we got to see how much money they've collected because most of these big cases, there's a collection amount up front that the practice holds before the procedure. So if you close in the middle of one of those procedures, we got to figure out the money. So anyways, big procedures, specifically ortho, implants, big stuff, we got to work through. That's obvious, guys, but like, be very humble in this process and just say, well, you know, I could be better. This guy or gal seller is probably better. How am I going to bridge that gap? Be humble about it. Too many buyers are like, oh, I can do it all. No problem. And then that's how they get themselves into trouble post-close. So talk to the seller. You know, you'll have the opportunity to talk to the seller. What kind of cases do you do? What kind of cases do you love? Which ones do you pass on? Tell me about your ortho protocols. Just that's the kind of stuff that you need to figure out as a clinician. So Procedure counts by dollars, big cases, work in progress. We kind of covered it. The last thing before we shut this episode down, it's kind of a longer one, but this is a good one. It's collection protocols, Paula. And this is something that I've been really digging into more lately. It's interesting. Your career develops, just like doctors, your career develops. Stuff I wasn't even looking at the first 5 years of my career. Now I'm like, what's going on with the billing and the codes they're using and their adjustments? And, does that really matter about the value of the business? No. We're never going to ask for a concession because they use too many adjustments or write-offs, or their software sloppy, or their whatever, their billing, their collections over the counter sloppy. It doesn't affect the value, but it does set the tone for how what you're going to inherit. Back to the conditioning of the patients. When we coach a lot of clients, I'll say it again, there's oftentimes a reconditioning of the patients
and the team.
Thank you. It's really the team, which then conditions the patient. So it started with the team being that way, and then they conditioned the patient. So do the patients expect to pay the day of service? Are the patients expecting to be reappointed? Are they expecting a very crystal clear treatment plan that's exact dollars? Just all of that, right? And the collection protocols is something that I've really dug into, or started digging into more. So I just find in general that front offices need a lot of help. So Paula, when we're coaching a buyer post close, what are very common things that need to be fixed? Let's just say the top two most common things that need to be fixed day one. I know it's like opening up literally a can of worms, but the ones that matter the most, I suppose. I don't know. That you
I would say the first is rescheduling patients before they leave. Usually hygiene's a little bit better. Not always, but usually we're conditioned when a patient's back in our operatory to go ahead and get them scheduled for their next appointment. What everybody's bad at is saying, do you want to reschedule? Thank goodness we have some patients that just say yes, because the way we ask and the way we do it is typically not going to get the best results. Front office, it's a little bit different story. I would say we're not as conditioned to get people on the schedule for treatment. We leave it a little bit up to them. Mm-hmm. There's bigger monies involved. There's decisions involved. And I wouldn't say more often than not, but but enough, patients want to look at a schedule. They want to think about it. They want to talk to somebody if there's any type of investment, which means they're going to walk out the door without an appointment. And not only do we allow them to do that, we have a horrible follow-up system, and we leave it in the patient's hands to call back and reschedule that $1,500 crown or $1,000 crown or what have you. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things is training or help recondition the front office to, number one, let's get them scheduled. We can find creative ways to go ahead and get them on the schedule, and they can still think about situations. Number two is if they don't get on the schedule, making sure that we don't leave it in their hands to give us a call back, that we control that situation. So I would say that's number one. If we want to throw collecting money, it is probably number two. We either don't know the exact amount. There's things we're doing to not get an accurate treatment plan. So mm-hmm. We're either sending a pre-D, or, which I don't like, and that's a whole another episode, or we're guesstimating. We think we're doing as accurate as we can. We're chicken scratching, trying to figure out how much, because we're not using our software appropriately. So that's kind of number two, is they don't even know how to use their software appropriately. So then their treatment plan isn't accurate. So they're either afraid to collect, because they're not 100% sure, and they're going to wait on that EOB to come back so they can then collect, or they just weren't ever made to collect, so they invoice the patient. So whatever that collection system is, it's broke in some way, shape, or form.
And that's what I've been seeing a lot of lately, is like looking at accounts receivables and seeing claims versus patient portion, and then seeing credits, and then trying to draw, and then looking at adjustment percentages. So
it's a hot mess.
So like when I'm looking at all of that, you're trying, because you can't interview the front office person. That's the hardest part of being a buyer's agent or rep or whatever, is like figuring out how Nancy Joe at the front does this without talking to her. and it's just all based on like random reports, but you can see what's going on at a high level, but you don't necessarily know what the problem specifically is. And so like, I think that's important for buyers to see going into a purchase is, okay, they're good at collecting insurance payments, or they're not, or they're good at collecting over the counter, or they're not, or they are
just not good at either.
Or their adjustments are so big because they're not using the software right, or maybe they're not doing insurance.
Or sometimes it's so clean because what they'll do is, instead of
cover up their tracks,
they'll just write it off.
When it's too clean, that's exactly what I think, is someone's covering up their tracks, and it's like, okay, they're trying to show that their reports are like perfect. There's no way.
I've always equated it to, you've probably heard me say this, Michael, and maybe even the audience, is like, it's like when you get your car with a lot of technology, or even your cell phone. It's, in my cell phone, I know how to text, I know how to get on social media, and I know how to schedule an appointment. That's about it. Sometimes people will show me something, I'm like, oh wow, it does that, I didn't know. My car is the same way. Mm-hmm. So you have to think about these front office gals and guys do the best with what they have, whether they taught themselves or they learned from somebody else, and they're at the helm of this ginormous ship, just doing it. And sometimes it's a super hot mess, and sometimes they figure some of it out. But at the end of the day, there's no school, or there's very few, which is something we help with on front office, and how to use your software correctly, and how to really, when to do adjustments. And by the way, when you do adjustments, how do you allocate them? You don't just stick an adjustment in, because you want those adjustments to tell a story. So that's the biggest thing is, you got to be careful on those ARs, and what is really the problem, for sure.
That's right. That's perfect. Well, this was a 40-minute jam-packed due diligence tutorial. If you didn't look at a true active patients, the retention pre-appointment, kind of that, procedures by count, dollar-wise, by count, making sure you can handle that. ARs, collection patient protocols.
Versus insurance.
Work in progress, big cases, things like ortho. If you haven't looked at any of that, if some of those things you haven't, go back to the office and look. The brokers are going to really love you doing a second chart audit. But that these are all things that are very important, and things that we help our clients with. So thank you all for always listening in. We appreciate it. Please like, subscribe, all the things, giving us a little star on a 5-star, not 1 star on Spotify, whatever you're listening to, it really does help the program. So without further ado, let's close this thing down and make it a great day.
All right. Peace out.
Thanks for listening. Let us know how you like the show. Rate us on Apple and Spotify. Subscribe and follow for more.